All right. Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining. I know Adrian's got a lot to cover today, so we're just going to jump into it. So thank you for joining us. I'm Christina Caesar, and I'll be moderating today's session. Today's webinar will be a debrief on the latest updates and product releases that Microsoft announced in September at Ignite 2020 related to their security suite. This webinar is a follow-up on last week's, which covered productivity, and you can find that recording on the events page on our website right now. Just a reminder, this session is being recorded, and please make sure to send any questions through the Q&A function within Teams. So really quickly, just a bit on us. Synergy Technical is an IT consulting firm headquartered in Richmond, Virginia. We have clients in over 70 countries and manage over 2 million licenses of Microsoft 365. This past February, we were actually named the Microsoft Security Deployment Partner of the Year Award, which our speaker today, Adrian Amos, actually received in San Francisco with a few of our other coworkers. And today's webinar is very fitting for Adrian. He actually led both productivity and security CIEs at Ignite for the last 2 years. So Adrian, I'll try to do it quickly and I'll hand it over to you. We've got a lot to cover today. So whenever you're ready, if you want to share your screen.
Awesome. Thank you, Christina. Really appreciate it. I'm so excited, guys. I'm going to go ahead and put my screen up here. I got my Ignite 2019 fanboy shirt on. I've even got a little bit of swag left over from last year. So I'm very much in the spirit. I'm excited about bringing you all the fun stuff that came out in the security side. So as I mentioned last week, security is my jam. I really do quite enjoy all the security stuff that I get to play with and experience in my demo tenant and go out and see in the world and relate back to, all of my 20+ years of doing infrastructure. So this is exciting for me, and there was a lot that came out. Obviously, Microsoft has made a really strong effort over the last year since introducing the 365 security homepage to unify security signals across all of the connected experiences and spaces and expand their reach and scope. So to that end, we've begun to push beyond EDR, right, into this idea of XDR, of extended detection and response. So there's been an investment in IoT, endpoints, apps, identity, infrastructure capabilities, and across the board, the focus has been to move beyond just detection and into those automated response capabilities. And actually, these response capabilities are powerful enough that it's actually kind of made it hard for me to enjoy watching TV. My wife and I were recently watching a silly sci-fi show where there was supposed to be this amazing, voice-powered AI, and there's a breach, and the guy comes into the house and he tells the AI to do all these investigations, and then when it's done to email the reports, and I'm like, why didn't they automate that? Why did he have to tell the systems to do these things? This is ridiculous that in 2020, when I have tools that are more powerful than that at my fingers, that I'm supposed to think this is advanced and futuristic. So Microsoft, hats off to you. You've ruined television. I greatly appreciate that. But anyway, so we're going to start our journey today with Microsoft's absolute favorite hobby in the entire world, and that is renaming products. So whereas there used to be at least 3 products at any given time that had advanced threat protection in the name, that whole space has now been rolled up under the Defender umbrella. And I know I've been beating this drum for about 3 years, but it should be very telling that of the improvements to the Defender product space that Microsoft is willing to bet the success of their future product development on that name. So gone are the days of asking what products an organization is using and having to contextually decipher, oh yeah, we're using ATP. It's because there is no longer an Office 365 ATP, a Defender ATP, an Azure ATP, or even, and let's pour one out for this guy, Advanced Threat Analytics, which is getting the end of mainstream support on January 12, 2021. I actually missed this announcement back in July. Very sad to say that I missed it. I can't say that I'm super surprised by it, but if you're still running ATA, and I know a lot of organizations are, it might be time to start planning your migration effort. So with that said, let's talk about what's new in the Defender space. So I mentioned that all the ATPs, right, are going through the rename shuffle, but so is MTP, the Microsoft Threat Protection layer on SKU that sat up on top of the E3 space to give you the E5 capabilities of security. So when you light that up, now you get this unified security dashboard. And this single pane of glass view into all the constituent components of the Microsoft security landscape is now called Microsoft 365 Defender, right? So the views are tweaked a little bit from where they were before, and there's some new cards that are intended to bring together some of that same tapestry of security signals, but now it's all, again, unified under the Defender brand. So devices now report from Defender for Endpoint, formerly Defender ATP. Productivity workloads now report from Defender for Office 365, which used to be Office 365 ATP. And identity workloads, tricky, now present from Defender for Identity, which is not Azure AD Identity Protection, but actually a rebrand of Azure ATP. So kind of the one that we didn't see a whole lot of, and the one that's intended to replace ATA is now Defender for Identity. So let's dig into each one of these and see what has changed in these spaces. So we'll start with Defender for Endpoint, which has been growing by leaps and bounds over the past, I guess, year and a half now. And while there haven't been any significant overhauls to the core functionalities of EDR and antivirus reporting, what we have seen is a massive investment in the large growing space of threat and vulnerability management, which now includes support for Mac OS, which brings the supported OS list up to Windows 7 through 10, Server 2008 R2 through 2019, Mac OS High Sierra and above, and there is planned support to bring Linux into the fold. And we also now have GA support for mobile threat defense on Android. As you can see from my scribble in notes, documentation is taking a little while to catch up with the new naming conventions. And actually the tool itself in the Android store or the Google Play Store is actually called Microsoft Defender ATP for Android. So, you know, they got a little bit of work to do there to clean up some of the last little bits. But it supports installation on both modes of enrolled devices. So whether you're still using the legacy device administrator mode, or you're looking, or you've moved into the Android enterprise mode, you can actually get it to work in both. Currently, only work profile enrolled devices are supported in Android enterprise. So support for other Android enterprise modes will be announced once they're ready, but we can deploy it through Intune, conveniently enough, right? And then, like I said, it's out there. It's in Google Play right now. I actually just enrolled my machine in it not too long ago, and I think this is a nice little key icon up in the top corner. And iOS is currently in preview. So for, you know, one of the few times where we sad lot with Androids actually got a little bit of love before the iOS folks. Anyway, moving into Defender for Office 365. This still lives principally at protection.office.com, but more and more features are moving out of that space now to live either at security.microsoft.com or compliance.microsoft.com. But for our purposes today, most of the things, not all, most of the things that live up under that threat management umbrella on the slide here are actually still going to be in this space, except critically, we have a brand new attack simulator, and this is at the security space. So if you look actually at the old attack simulator space under threat management and protection.office.com, it's actually still there. And you may recall that I've had feelings about it in the past. This is brand new though, right? And I think the reason why the old one is still alive is principally so that if you've run reports against your users, they probably won't import into this new space. So it's there principally as archive. The new one though is absolutely, completely and totally overhauled from what we've ever had before, right? No more rudimentary logging, no more simple 3 or 4 possible attacks. What we can do now is build multiple campaigns to run simultaneously with 49 pre-canned payloads. We can add custom payloads if we want to. We can target all of our users, subsets of our users, individual users, users group based on group membership. We can even pick users by location, right? So we can target everyone in a given city. So that's going to be keyed off of the properties in their Azure AD accounts, right? So I'm not even having to build groups to do this. It's just detecting, hey, you've got users that say they're in Bellevue. I want to hit Bellevue. Let's do it. Let's see how they're responding. And then I can launch, like I said, as many of these concurrently as I want to across different business segments with different payloads and different techniques. And when someone does click on the link, because they're going to, right, we have much more granular control over what happens, including we can now actually assign them content to go and consume, some training content along with a due date. And conveniently, when Grady clicked on this link, poor Grady, right, he got a link in an email to go and take the training, right? Of course, at this point, you're already feeling a little gun shy about clicking links. I don't know how quickly you're going to take the training, but he can also say, hey, this isn't really convenient to me right now, but I've got up to October 28th to do this. There's a calendar item right there. He can import that right into his calendar with a reminder and all the relevant details necessary for him to go out and take the training. And I did do this training yesterday as Grady. And there's a little brief video with some light interaction and followed by a multiple choice test at the end. So they actually have to show that they did something. And once I passed that test as Grady, I did pass, I'm pretty proud of myself. My training stats were automatically updated in the attack simulator, right? Which then also surfaces items from my secure score as posture improvements that I should make across my tenant. Now, as a reminder, you will see there's a 50-point object right there that I would hope that you all have done, right? The purpose of my tenant is not to show you all the crazy cool security things that you can do, but to show you how things should be contextualized in a relatively secure environment, while also allowing people to be productive to break things on purpose, right? So don't at me about my lack of MFA for admins. That's on purpose. All right, so moving on to Cloud App Security for just a hot second, which thankfully was spared the renaming side. What I want to call out though is that this little interstitial notification at the top corner here, helpfully suggesting that I enable Defender for Identity, is actually a rename from the little interstitial that always said, hey, you should turn on Azure ATP in the past. But there's a little funny thing that happens, right? If I click on that, it actually takes me to the yet to be renamed, right? We still have some cleanup to do, homepage for Defender for Identity. Or does it? Because while that notification takes me to this notification, if I click on get started in this notification, it actually takes me right back to Cloud App Security. So again, a little bit of cleanup still happening here. But once we do kind of go through that loop a couple times, we're actually end up back at the new Defender for Identity experience, which is actually the Cloud App Security user investigation page. Now, eagle-eyed viewers will note that this is not actually a change from the previous behavior, but what we do now have is the identity security tool sets are now aligned on what is the proper way to investigate a user and where to go to get that information. So the functionality was already fully baked into Cloud App Security. Now, instead of saying that we're doing it in a different tool set, we're actually just calling that subset of the tools Defender for Identity. Still leveraging capabilities on premises with agents on domain controllers. All right, whew. So with that, talking about domain controllers, talking about actual identity, let's talk about some of the things that actually happened a little bit outside of the Defender umbrella, but really focusing on what Azure AD itself is capable of doing. And the first one of these I have been excited about because it has been in preview for over 5 years. I mean, it actually predates the Ibiza interface of Azure. This has been crazy, but we now finally have in general availability administrative units. Yay! I was, gosh, 6 years. It's been over 6 years now because Ibiza came out in 2014. Anyway, super excited about this guy. Spent 6 years in preview. You used to only be able to get to it through PowerShell, right? It was kind of challenging. And actually, this did come out a little bit before Ignite, but it really wasn't a whole lot of fanfare about it. But I really wanted to call out some things that have been introduced since its release that have actually made it a compelling thing for organizations to start looking at. So what is an administrative unit? Functionally, they do what organizational units were always intended to do in Active Directory. They give you the ability to limit an admin's scope to a subset of users or groups or however you want to define it. So the thought would be, and originally when the documentation was first released in alpha form in 2014, it said maybe you've got a West Coast and maybe you got an East Coast and they have an admin team or an IT team and you've got an IT team, and you want to allow each side to worry about their own stuff, right? And you could do that again with PowerShell, but now we actually have a UI for it. So again, the thought is that we're going to, be able to actually organize our groups, our users, in ways that are logical for us and control administrative overhead. Now, this is going to immediately kick off the same 20+ year debate we've had with Active Directory about, well, how do I organize my OUs? We don't actually have to worry about that with administrative units. I think they were intelligent in naming it something different, because with an OU, a user could only belong to one of them, right? And we would try to get real crafty with our OUs by saying, well, I'm not actually going to put any users in these OUs. I'm going to put groups. I'm going to put my user in all these groups, and then I'm going to try to troubleshoot for the rest of eternity why my resultant set of policies doesn't work the way I want it to. In this case, though, a user can be in as many administrative groups as we want. And so we can custom tailor that, hey, maybe the password admin for this group is not the password admin for this group, and maybe this, and this. So again, we don't have to get worried about falling into the same pitfalls that we did of trying and laboring for months over how to organize our administrative units. You can add users individually to an administrative unit, which is fine if you're dealing with a relatively small organization or if you need to perform some limited testing. But frankly, I don't think that's super elegant, because now you're adding users to groups, to administrative units, to apps, to all kinds of other things individually. I don't think that scales a lot. So actually, for my money, I would much rather add them to groups and then add the groups to the administrative unit. Super easy. And since my administrative units are intended to give local IT control over assets and users in that location, I actually decided to build dynamic groups in my Azure Active Directory to capture those users who exist at a given site. So as long as my city attribute matches Bellevue or Seattle in this, or Bellevue or Redmond in this particular case, the users will be captured into that location HQ group, which means they will fall under the control of this administrative unit, which means then I have whatever limited admin control is scoped for that space, and all I have to do is make sure that my Azure AD attributes are properly maintained for my users. So here you go. Actually, I forgot to click on the click, but there's the rules for defining my dynamic membership in this group. As long as the city is accurate for these users, they're good to go. Now, once I have my administrative units defined and populated, I can add roles and administrators. So clicking into Authentication Administrator, I can add roles. I can see that I've added Cameron White to that role for this administrative unit, right? So we can see right here down at the bottom under Scope in the middle, it actually says that his administrative assignment is to this administrative unit. So bear in mind that tenant level admins maintain access into administrative units. So if you're a global admin, you're still a global admin even inside this administrative unit. So whatever we give Cameron White is in addition to what a global admin has. So bear in mind that this is additive or cumulative. It is not it is not a replacement of the administrative controls in that admin unit. Speaking of roles, we have some recent additions, and I am so excited to see these two pop up right here: Printer Administrator and Printer Technician. And if we've been paying attention for the last few months or heard anything coming through the grapevine for a while, maybe you've even seen some preview documentation out there saying that it's coming. But that means that Universal Print is on its way to GA, coming to Azure Active Directory near you, which means that we will finally, in 2021, hopefully, be able to stop providing users administrative rights to their local PCs just so they can install a printer. There's no word on timing yet, but the framework is here. This is also exciting for another reason too, that you know, we are seeing more organizations that are below, let's call it 2,500 users, start looking seriously at the idea of turning off their data centers. But the number one reason why organizations cannot do that is file servers and print servers, right? Maybe that's numbers 1 and 2, but they're usually kind of the same. We're seeing people say, okay, well, the files are easy, right? I can just throw that in SharePoint, but I still got these stinking print servers. Well, it's coming. It's coming. It's coming. It's coming. It's coming. I am so excited. We're going to see a massive overhaul in the ability to secure end user devices and actually sunset data centers because of a technology that we've been tied to for 35 years. I'm excited. I don't know if it shows. All right, and since we're talking about roles as well, let me shift to my most favoriteest feature of Azure AD, which is privileged identity management and the return of the overview page. Now, Microsoft took this view away from me about 18 months ago, and I really don't think anything in the cloud has ever made me sadder. Well, it's back. I'm excited to say that we can now get our at-a-glance reporting of recent activations, privileged identity alerts, and high-level overview of role assignments. That is awesome for me because this is the easiest way for someone to get in and just kind of see what's going on in the space, right? But we also got a preview capability of managing access to roles through cloud-only groups. Pay attention to what I didn't say there. Cloud-only groups, all right? So put that in your back pocket. All right, so this integrates into the PIM experience directly through the group management experience panes, and much the same way actually that licenses can be done, right? So once I click on the button to enable access for this group, I'm able to see and modify the assignments for members. So in this case, I went through and assigned expiration dates for access because why not, right? And I even added my own external guest account because yes, you can add guests to roles, right? So this is really super duper important. If you're working with an outside partner, you don't have to create an identity for them inside your Azure Active Directory to expose groups and roles and memberships and rights and all that fun stuff. You can let them come in with the identity they already have and expose these things to them, time bound them, audit them, get all the reporting on them. It'll feed through your identity protection capabilities. It'll feed through your PIM. It'll feed through everything and treat them with whatever rights you want to give them, and you maintain control. And then you can just sever it when you're done. Fantastic. So we can now also cross-correlate that experience to the native PIM dashboard with some interesting new capabilities, like surfacing that there is an actual functional difference now between a group member and a group owner, right? So from a PIM perspective, that difference can be having an owner be a permanent role holder, right? Yeah, maybe you won't do that, but having members require activation. And while that's only one possible use, remember that group owners have the rights to manage members of their own groups. So if you have a global print admin, they can manage who has access or who should have access to the print boss's group or role, which means they don't have to call you, the global admin, to add somebody else to that role. That's their problem. Let them handle it. Whew. All right, so still kind of in the whole like management and security space, right? But not in the Defender umbrella at the moment. Azure AD got a lot of fun new toys, but it would be remiss of Microsoft to not give MEM and Intune, MEM being Microsoft Endpoint Manager, right? The combination of Intune and SCCM. First and foremost, while I don't have a slide to show you this, Windows Virtual Desktop support is coming to Intune. Yay! The biggest hurdle in my whole life to supporting that space was having to maintain total separate administrative control of those entities. Now we're actually going to be able to integrate those management interfaces. Right now, it's scoped to single session instances, but the plan is to expand that support to multi-session coming soon. So security baselines got a massive overhaul at the end of August, early September, right? You can see that we have new versions of these security baselines, both the core MDM security baseline and the Defender for Endpoint one that, again, hopefully we'll get the naming updated and all the documentation fairly soon. And we get a notification now too that the old security baseline is out of date or deprecated, right? So in the past, if we wanted to upgrade, there wasn't a really clean solution. We could either upgrade it and lose everything or not, right? And now when we actually go to change the version of a baseline, we actually have an option up here that says review update. And once we click on that button, we're going to get a list of all, actually you can export it as a CSV, right? Open it in Excel. You're going to get a list of all the settings in all of them. And then you can go in and turn on AutoFilter and look at the differences between the two. Do the settings match? Are they unequal, right? Is this something that if you turn it on in its baseline version, it's going to revert something you've done? Or is it a new additional control, or have they removed a control from it? So you're going to be able to see what those changes are going to be before you decide to upgrade. And then you're going to have the ability, when you do decide to upgrade, to choose one of the options there of keeping my existing setting customizations or discarding my setting customizations, right? So Microsoft also decided to return from their 10+ year hiatus from the VPN space of being a viable VPN solution provider to introducing Microsoft Tunnel for VPN solution for iOS and Android. There is currently a little bit of an infrastructure lift around doing this, but I have a feeling that as this space grows and expands, we're going to see a change in that. I'm hoping, I'm just speculating. But right now, in order to do Microsoft Tunnel, you're going to need to stand up a virtual machine, whether it's on-prem with an agent running, or if it's in the cloud with some sort of express route or big fat pipe back to your on-premises environment to light this up. But we will actually be able to do all the cool high-tech features that you expect of a high-performance VPN solution for our iOS and Android users. Funny enough, I was actually planning to speak to this about how excited customers who are pure Microsoft shops would be about having a return to this space, and yet there is not currently a Windows client for it currently. I have a feeling that's going to be coming soon too, so keep an eye on that space. So let's swing back into Defender, right? We've talked about all the things that kind of fall under some of the tool sets that Defender protects, but we also got a pretty big overhaul to the Azure Security Center too, that aligns with the new product line. So now Azure Security Center's superset is now called Azure Defender. So technically Azure Security Center still exists as a subset of Azure Defender, and that makes me very happy because I like my mug and I don't want to have to go get a new one or scratch that off and write Defender. But it continues to be its own separate standalone security offering as Security Center. But when you add on this, it continues to be that as Security Center offering the security capabilities while doubling as the data ingestion point for EDR device for non-EDR capable servers. Man, I need to drink more coffee. For non-EDR capable devices in our environment, right? And Azure Security Center itself still also offers a secure score and compliance tools for cloud infrastructure. And it also can integrate directly with cloud app security. But Azure Defender introduces a slightly tweaked UI, right? Because why not? Along with new capabilities though around Azure Arc support for SQL and VMs, agentless OT and IoT integration through the CyberX acquisition, and some very seriously enhanced threat protection capabilities for containers. And we'll cover more of that as we further on down the road. I think we're going to have to come back and do a deeper dive into that, because what I want to get across here, right, is that Azure Defender is the additional component that takes our EDR capabilities of Defender for endpoints, combining them with the Microsoft 365 Defender capabilities for identity, for cloud apps, office workloads, to then enable what we consider now to be the new XDR data set, right? So if we're looking at rolling up all of the Defender tools, we actually roll up to an overarching product that Microsoft calls, conveniently enough, Microsoft Defender, right? So now when we talk Defender, now we have the same ATP conversation we had, which was, well, which one? But if you need more than just XDR, right? So you're running a SOC and you have a recognition or you recognize that SOC and XDR are slightly different entities. We're also going to need to roll up into a SIEM. And Azure Sentinel is Microsoft's fully cloud infrastructureless SIEM solution, and it got a few updates as well. So let's cover what those are, right? UEBA came to Sentinel. This is kind of exciting because previously it just really wasn't there. But we're now going to be able to see, we're using Microsoft's built-in behavioral analytics engine to surface data through Sentinel. We're going to be able to build comprehensive profiles across time and peer group horizons to identify anomalous activities and add behavioral insights for threat hunting and detection. There's going to be specific workbooks that are going to enable interactive dashboards for investigating suspect users and built-in queries and analytics rules, leveraging those behavioral insights and anomalies for threat hunting and detection. And the new entity profiles will include, like you see on the right, contextual information and timeline of activities and alerts across the most relevant data sources and insights to inform decision-making. We also got then, as a result, as a kind of a necessary result of that, some enhanced threat intelligence capabilities, right? So now we can monitor and respond to changing threats provided by multiple providers, okay? So we're going to be able to track and apply intelligence, again, from multiple sources. You choose what the sources are, you track threats against them. We'll be able to filter, view, tag, search against indicators, add your own custom indicators that are discovered while hunting and investigating. And indicators can be automatically matched against your security data to find threats targeting your organization and provide insights into the prevalence and source of attacks, which can then be used to help further prioritize your response. And now we can also consume, and we're actually set up and consume our own watch lists, right? We'll be able to import collections of data from external sources. Now, right now, those external sources are purely CSV, but you can decide, hey, there's this list of risky users I just want monitored. There's this list of IP addresses I just want monitored, right? We can consume these in as watch lists and have those filter into our analytics rules, threat hunting, workbooks, notebooks, and within any query, we can as allow and deny lists, contextual clues, and more. So there's all kinds of cool stuff coming there. Like I said, it is currently limited to CSV, but the expectation is that more formats are coming very soon. Oh, did I say notebooks out loud? Yes, I did. So we now have notebooks, and they're consuming Azure machine learning, right? So they're running on the machine learning service, and some of this is like, you know, jargon, right? So bear with me for a hot second here. So we're going to be able to provide a customizable Jupyter notebook experience for analyzing your security data, right? That's the jargon, Jupyter Lab, all that fun stuff. IntelliSense, right, coming for improved ease of use, support for the existing experience, as well as a point-in-time notebook snapshots and notebook file exporter. And funny enough, if you look right here on the right, there's even a notebook to help get you started with notebooks, because it is a new experience. It's you know, helpful to have a baseline of understanding where this is. But before you get too click happy going down into the notebooks, bear in mind that some of these notebooks are premium and may come with their own specific external licensing requirements. So just keep an eye on that. XDR and SIEM, okay, we're done with that, right? Let's talk a little bit about this super exciting space that is compliance, right? Because after 3 major iterations of a product, Microsoft now finally is calling Compliance Manager a generally available product. This is crazy. I didn't actually realize this was the case. I've been excited about Compliance Manager for 2.5 years and didn't realize that we were always in preview versions. Joke's on me, I guess. Anyway, I've been doing, like I said, Compliance Manager for years. I've been playing and introducing it in different security sessions, and how its functionality largely mirrors that of SecureScore, right? I mean, this looks super duper like SecureScore. If you've been clinging to the old or even the old Compliance Manager at servicetrust.microsoft.com, that is now going to redirect you into compliance.microsoft.com, which is live, and now all of our full template management experience is here. This is where we're going to be doing e-discovery, communications compliance is all now in this compliance.microsoft.com space. But interestingly, I did mention that we have all of our template management here, but there's a new catch, right? And that is that if we look at the assessment templates that are published, Whereas there had never been any previous licensing requirements or implications within anything in Compliance Manager. In fact, all you had to have was an active subscription to gain access to Compliance Manager and all the capabilities that it offered. There is now a notification that says that some of the templates will be moving to a premium licensing model. And if you click on that link, right, at Learn More, you will see that those templates are going to be further restricted to customers at specific licensing levels. Cost sheets have not been released yet, but it's worth noting that premium assessments will be available for purchase to Office 365 E5A5 and Microsoft's 365 E5A5 customers. We are trying diligently to get more information on that and hope to get an answer back very soon. But if you want to know what the templates are that are included, they're kind of in the top left, and the premium templates are kind of everywhere else. If you are focused principally on GDPR and NIST 800-53, which actually are the two most common ones that we see our organizations driving toward, no worries. Those are going to be considered included templates. There's not going to be any premium pricing for that. But if you're driving towards something else, in fact, I just had a conversation this morning with another organization that they're looking to drive toward NIST 800-171. Well, that's kind of over there in the middle of the premiums, right? Again, no word on timing of when the pricing is going to go live on that. So we are keeping our ear to the ground. But if you're trying to drive toward completion of one of those, you might think about accelerating your timelines or make sure you got the right licensing in place to be able to qualify to continue using those. All right, that brings me to the end of product announcements. But Microsoft also demonstrated a successful implementation of decentralized identity with verifiable credentials in partnership with MilGears, where veterans are able to quickly present verifiable credentials for enrollment into higher education. And I'm really excited about this. This is an area that I've been kind of watching for about the last 4 years, and I've been trying to get ahead of it, trying to learn as much as I can about it. I've been excited to see that there's a decentralized identity foundation, that there's all this stuff that's coming into it, and actually Microsoft is a major player in helping define this space. They have helped define how some of the protocols should work, and helped publish a lot of open source details about what technologies should be leveraged and why this is going to be important. So the MilGears thing, I don't have a slide on it, unfortunately, but if you've ever worked with the government, you know that asking the government to verify something can take longer than maybe it should. And in fact, when I was doing defense contracting, and everything was manual, they told us to expect 18 months to complete a security background investigation. By the time I left the government, where they had started to move things more digitally, it still took over 6 months. So if you're a military veteran who's got something that they, or an institution they want to apply to, and they want to be able to say, hey, I did these things in the military, you might well actually miss the application cutoff for the higher education program you're applying to, while the government looks around to see if they can prove that you actually did the thing you said you did. So this is actually really super important, because what it allowed MilGears to do was basically allow these verifiable credentials to be instantly searchable, right? Did this veteran who has this credential on his phone actually do this thing? Boop, yes. Boop, yes? I mean, that was a 6-month process before. Boop, yes is incredible. So that's just one of the capabilities that I'm excited about, and why I'm so focused on this idea of decentralized identity. So let's talk about what identity is, how it works, and why this is going to be important. At a super duper high level, identity has traditionally fallen into 2 major camps, right? We have enterprise identity, some folks call it IAM, some folks call it EIAM, serviced by either something on premises like Active Directory, or in the cloud is Azure Active Directory. And then on the other side, we have consumer identity, which is usually called CIAM or SIAM. So IAM and SIAM. Consumer identity is driven by dark magic that I will not pretend to understand. But identity at the enterprise level is pretty simple, right? You, the IT guy, are responsible for knowing about the user. You have an object to which you attach attributes, ACLs, apps, whatever you got, and then you ask the user of that identity to safeguard it on your behalf, right? With personal password hygiene and all that good fun stuff. Generally, that identity has been restricted to corporate assets within your enclave, though it gets extended to other solutions through SSO. And this is the object to which we've paid all the attention over the past 5 years of beating the EMS drumline of identity is the new control plane, right? Without a secure enterprise identity as a foundation, your organization will be susceptible to all manner of attacks against data and reputation. So because of that philosophy, it's very rare to see organizations let individual users control much about their individual identity objects. Maybe they can reset their own passwords, but that's about it. So you think about the common, I mean, way too common scenario of someone gets married and just wants to change their last name. That's not a fire IT is looking to put out right now for that user. They've got other things going on. And now the user has to go through HR to submit a change that gets filtered over to IT. Now you got to find time in the IT schedule to actually process that change. It's not really designed for a lot of frequent change. And even in some of our more advanced implementations where we actually have users being a little bit more responsible for some things, there's not an attribute flow back in a lot of cases. Now you compare that though against consumer identity, which is what we use all over the internet. It's how we buy from Amazon. It's how we log into Facebook and Google and all the other stuff that we care about outside of work. Generally, we as consumers have the right to update as much information about ourselves as we want, and we can even take our consumer identity between sites on the internet. But someone still owns that identity, and it's not you, right? So because of how differently these identity models are architected and because of licensing complications, we've tended to view IAM and SIAM as completely separate ideas. But now we also kind of have this weird middle ground where businesses are collaborating in ways that are neither strictly consumer nor strictly enterprise, right? We have this complicated middle ground that we're responsible for managing some more data than we've ever had to do with more objects than we've ever had to do, but not enough to raise to the level of being a consumer item. And we expose ourselves, therefore, to more compliance requirements around that data and the risk that comes along with those compliance requirements. So to put these architectures into Microsoft lingo, right? On the left, we have Azure and Azure, or AD and Azure AD. On the right, we have Azure B2C, business to customer. And in the middle, the space I didn't draw, we have B2B, business to business, partnerships, federations, if you will. No matter what identity model we choose, though, every participant comes with different requirements and expectations. So we end up with a wallet full of physical ID cards, digital ID cards, dozens of logons with hundreds or thousands of individual attributes floating around all of us all the time, exposing us and the corporation and potentially even the government to breach, right? Decentralized identity seeks to reduce that exposure, put attribute and identity itself ownership back into the hands of the individual, and allow those individuals to expose key attributes and verifiable credentials on demand, but in a revocable way and built on technologies that exist in the wild today. Because we can't say, well, we'll fix all of this in Web 7.0, right? We have to do something now. So the system in its current design is completely built on open standards, right? Allows users, human beings, to possess one or more decentralized identities that are not owned by any central distributor, including Microsoft, right? So that's why it's considered decentralized. So it's not just an email address and a password. If you think about what Facebook and Google have tried to do for you for the last several years of allowing you to take your identity and move it with you, it still boils down to an email address and a password, right? But there's no reason why an identity must exist as a function of an email address. An identity can be any number of attributes that you want it to be. So DAI attributes and DIDs must be resolved across public ledgers like blockchain. But attributes like claims and credentials and et cetera, and they're managed by keys that are accessible only to the user with user managed consent to access those claims, including granular access controls. So these granular controls can allow things like automatic access for emergency medical staff to access your blood type, or potentially your entire medical history if you choose to expose it, or allow a hospital administrator to access your insurance information to reduce time to care in critical medical situations. More commonly, they'd be used, like in the case of mill gears, to quickly assert a credential that a university could verify without a lengthy background checking process. Microsoft also did a big demonstration not too long ago about using it at the university bookstore, right? If you sign up for this discount deal, then you can apply this at the university bookstore, and it shows up as cards in a digital wallet. Super simple, but consumer-based. So in practice, the model works on these key elements drawn here, right? Some of these elements, as you can see, are still going through iterative design phases, right? This is not there's no product. There are several members of a foundation, and we'll show in a second, but there's no product yet, right? This is all still kind of being fleshed out. There are parts of it that work. There are parts of it that can still go through some iteration. There are parts of it, 3 or 4 of these things can exist as a single object, the way they're built right now. But Microsoft has thrown their support behind this, and that's crazy without having done it with a product. And they've offered tweaks to the Bitcoin blockchain. Actually, there was all big press about it last year or year before that Microsoft sees your identity in Bitcoin. No, what they've done is they've taken the Bitcoin blockchain and they've introduced multiplexing technology to allow it to scale to global transaction requirements. So whereas before blockchain could only handle, I think, 10 transactions per second, they've multiplexed it up to thousands, right? So I guess obviously that means that there's going to need to be more ledgers and more blockchain systems, but Bitcoin itself is the actual foundation that Microsoft has thrown its technology weight behind and saying, this is scalable and we can work with this. So from a user perspective, as I mentioned, right, verifiable credentials are going to appear as cards in an authenticator app. That's the current design anyway. Users can expose these cards to verifiers on demand, and the list of companies working with the Decentralized Identity Foundation is growing by the day. And while Microsoft has been largely touting this as the new paradigm in the consumer identity space, I actually see tremendous opportunity to align all 3 identity models here. So why, for instance, would you create an account for me, a new user, when I already have an enormous digital footprint in the outside world? What if we stopped viewing identity as an IT problem and viewed it more in the way that HR views employee relationships? You can be in an organization a 1099 contractor, or you can be a W-2 employee, and most corporations are very well accustomed to dealing with both. It doesn't give the average HR person heartburn or sleepless nights to wonder if Bob in accounting is an employee or a 1099 worker. But it gives us tremendous heartburn to think about exposing our users and our identity base in the same way. But the 1099 worker is responsible for paying their own taxes, so the corporation can pay a flat rate to them and be done, right? There's no complexities of benefits. They have much easier severability, much greater flexibility for the employee to use their own equipment, which, surprise, most of our users are trying to use their own equipment today anyway, right? So the idea kind of fits. And so that identity model can actually apply much the same way that the employer relationship model can apply. And Azure Active Directory actually already has the tooling in place to support this. So you saw earlier that my real actual Synergy account is an Azure AD role holder in Contoso, right? But I can actually take that integration much, much further. Azure AD P2 customers already have identity governance with entitle management capabilities in their environments. In Contoso, for instance, I've captured the primary applications and groups and internal resources necessary to do the sales job, right? I've packaged them up and I've exposed them as a role called sales contractor. That package defines not just the resources, but even the level to which a member should be able to gain access into those resources. Whether they're internal identities or external identities, they'll be able to have the same level of access and all the same necessary steps in place to approve and review access on an ongoing basis. So you can see here that in order to gain access, so if I add somebody to the sales contractor role, they're going to get some individual specific sub roles. Let me turn on my laser pointer if I can remember how to do it. I'm not too good with this. Here we go. Oh yeah, laser pointer, right? So I've got all my roles that a salesperson would have within these sites, within these applications, and I can see where they're being sourced from. So Salesforce isn't even an internal resource, right? I am allowing someone whose identity is approved in my environment to hit Salesforce that's SSO integrated with my environment, but isn't in there. I'm giving them teams, I'm giving them sites, I'm giving them roles within this. These guys are visitors because I don't want them making changes to that space. And then I'm opening up to external users with 2 stages of verification, questions that the user will be presented in order to gain access. There's going to be automatic expiration after 180 days, and then there's going to be automated access reviews. So all of my concerns that I might have about, well, how do I know that user doesn't, when they leave, their access goes away? Well, I mean, that's all addressed, right? I've got the first stage of approval is Megan Bowen getting an email. She has 5 days to decide whether or not to approve it. Then it goes to her boss. Once they approve it, it's going to go over to Diego and HR, right? Because we still want HR involved in this. If no action is taken there, it's going to go to his boss. And then there's going to be, like I said, an automatic quarterly access review to say, hey, should this user still be getting in here? So let's see. Then when the user actually gets the access package to request, right? So first of all, you have to accept their identity, right? And it's an external identity, right? What stops that from being decentralized identity? We've granted that identity access into our enclave. Now we're just letting them have access to a group of applications. Here's all the applications and things that they're going to have access to when they hit this nice big plus button. And when they hit it, it's going to come up and ask them, what is their name? What is their quest? What is their favorite color? And what is the average velocity of an unladen swallow if they're unlucky, right? They're going to be forced to provide a business justification. When they hit submit, it's going to go through the process of setting up all the necessary approvals. So the tooling is there. It exists. Everything that we need to do to get started with managing access into our applications from a decentralized identity perspective is there, and everything they do once they're there is audited. Everything's going to go through our conditional access policies. All of our stuff that we normally are used to doing, it's ready for us. Now again, Microsoft does not have a specific product offering to wrap up around all of this, right? And that's what's crazy to me. They're helping shape the space while doing a lot of the work to showcase its potential. But you can actually get started with some of this right now. There's documentation on how to get started issuing and verifying credentials on Microsoft's development sites. It's an exciting technology to be a part of, and so here you go. Here's the tools you'll need to have to light up in order to get started issuing a credential. Yes, Key Vault. Yeah. So that's kind of the only one that's a little bit of a curveball for a lot of organizations, right? But I really do think that this gives us an opportunity to start thinking about identity as something that we no longer have to worry about managing, securing, reporting on compliance, or any of that stuff. We let the users take care of that themselves. We serve them the applications necessary to do their job. They just do the job. What an easy way to think about life. All right. With that, I actually did get to the end in less than an hour. I am really excited. I hope you caught something out of this that you can take back, and if you have questions, I am more than happy to address whatever I can. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to Christina, and I really do appreciate it.
Wow, I'm so amazed that you got through that. That was fantastic, Adrian. Thank you so much for that. There are not currently any questions in the Q&A box. I know we went through a lot today. Like I said, this recording will be posted, and you will also get it in your follow-up email. But does anyone have any last-minute questions that they want to post? I know we talked about a lot.
Yes. I warned you I was going to be excited about this week.
I know, you were so enthusiastic. No, it's fantastic. Well then, okay, yeah. So you will be receiving a follow-up email today with the recording. It'll go online, and the productivity twin to this webinar is also already online if you want to access that. But that's all I had. So thank you guys for joining us. I hope everybody has a great day.
Thanks.